Before we continue, understand this podcast is for adults only and refers to relationships and activities between adults which are voluntary and consensual. If you or anyone you know is being abused, coerced, or violently aggressed against, please reach out for help to the appropriate authorities. Tal, hello and welcome. Gorean Voice, Episode 6, Goreans and Politics. Thanks for tuning in again. This fine morning, I'm taking a look at the politics of Gore, but more importantly also examining the way a Gorean lifestyle or even ethos rubs up against the various styles of politics here on Earth. For the latter, I'll be shallowly mining the deep veins of various Gore-related discussion groups, chief among them the Gorean Gathering Place on FetLife, as well as diving into some of my own thoughts and experience on the matter. So first, let's have a look at the various political systems that exist in the fictional world of Gore. John Norman, like many Sword and Sandal and Sword and Planet authors, seems to have an affinity for the concept of the city-state. The artificial technological ceiling seems to keep Gore in a type of medieval stasis, an environment in which the city-state seems to be about the largest practical polity. There are other polities on Gore, such as tribal federations, which are not tied to a particular permanent location, Thessalocratic, maritime empires which project power over a large body of water, and various smaller units of political organization, ranging from the despotic to the semi-democratic. In some cases, a leader may be deposed by way of a duel or other challenge of combat, or even be subjected to full-on Klingon promotion style of rank climbing, which simply involves murdering one's superiors. In other cases, a pirate king may lose an election and need to step down to make way peacefully for his successor. In many cases, the stories contain unique intrigue and mysteries surrounding succession crises, and Norman spilled plenty of ink, while his characters spilled more than a little blood in terms of political assassinations, etc. This diversity of polities, I believe, comes not merely as the organic result from John Norman's world-building. I believe that in keeping with the overall theme of the novels, that the stronger, swifter, and smarter will overcome, so too in the case of political systems themselves. Having such a diversity of systems in place also gives contrasting circumstances in which to compare the happiness and fulfillment of the inhabitants, citizens, or subjects of those polities. Sometimes Norman is a little less subtle in this than I'd prefer, but he gets the message across. The frigid witches with a capital B, who run the city of Tharna into the ground as a matriarchy, not only make their men in the city miserable, but they make the women and themselves miserable as well. Indeed, at the end of Tarl's adventure there, joy and color returns to the city, but the erstwhile dictator Lara offers to become Tarl's slave. Oh, how the mighty have fallen! But such a transition is very much in keeping with Norman's and my views that women will take the reins most reluctantly and if they are forced to, they will do so with resentment in their hearts and absolutely no respect for the men who they are running. If I could have written a single line of dialogue from that book, I would have written Tara's reply to her offer like so. Please allow me a moment to get into character. Yeah, homie, don't play that. I would have told her off. There's also a funny parody about that character, by the way, involving the similarity between her name and that of another city, and confusion between certain Gorean weights and measures. I'll try to find it and link to it in the description. On the more general topic of Gorean polities, though, there is also a more universal concept that most people on Gore adhere to, though some more loosely than others. They all live under the priest kings. Most people on Gore have no idea what a priest king is. However, they have some idea of what priest kings can do. I suppose priest kings, to an extent, lie at the very top of the political hierarchy, who, like the Olympians or the members of some other pantheon, are understood by few, but known to all. It doesn't hurt that in their case they really did descend from the heavens. Now that we've had a look at the various political structures that exist in the fictional world of Gore, let's have a look at some political issues here on Earth and how they may impact people who try to live Gorean. For some context, I'm recording this in early 2024. For the moment, I'm digging up a post from nearly 2 years ago, in early 2022. The original post was made when our societies were about 2 years into some awful convulsions born of the misapprehension of the concept of risk. In this April 22 post titled Goreans and Politics, the poster urged people of the Gorean persuasion to engage in the political process. The post was well written, and I've always admired this poster's forthrightness and honesty. But what I found fascinating was the first reply. The man's reply was, quote, "The first responsibility of governments is to promote the safety of its citizens. The pandemic restrictions were based on sound public health policies and were the responsible response. I much more respect leaders who make decisions based on what is correct rather than what is popular," end quote. It struck me as most un-Gorean, as the sort of response I would not expect at all from a man who is in control of his own life. Whatever one's opinion on the efficacy of the pandemic restrictions, to take them lying down like that is, in my opinion, most unbecoming of a man. My own sense of disgust at this jellyfish creature aside, it got me thinking, what sort of politics here on Earth are A, most conducive or the least obstructive to living Gorean, and B, have Gorean or pseudo-Gorean elements built into their legal structures? The first question is fairly easy. It seems to me that the less government is involved in one's life, the more one is at liberty to pursue a Gorean or any other sort of lifestyle. I suppose I mean this both from an explicit intrusion perspective, in that a government that is less interested in the private affairs of its citizens or subjects is going to interfere less in one's lifestyle, but I also mean it in the sense of less government overall. A smaller state exerts less influence on people's attention and concern, and steals less of people's wealth. I happen to live in a silly country where people seem to believe that there is a multi-billion-dollar government-flavored solution to every problem, and that any time the government solution doesn't yield the desired result, the solution is more government. As such, I don't start keeping any of my earned money until sometime in July or August. Combined with the fact that it's pretty hard to be ubar within the swing of my sword, or even ubar in my own house, in a country whose laws about self-defense, even in the event of a home invasion, are basically lay down and die, I can't help but feeling that in this silly country I have quite a bit in common with a slave. It could be worse. I would definitely call myself a subject more than a citizen. Luckily, the incompetence of the government I live under outpaces their ambitions of totalitarian control, so a man with limber ankles such as myself can dance with the silliness. I have considered moving to another jurisdiction, but such a rearguard action doesn't really become me. I'd rather keep raising bees and goats than move to the actual land of milk and honey. Gorean living, though, does have a contradiction near and dear to its core. How can I, as a libertarian-minded individual, who can go on and on about voluntarism and personal sovereignty, endorse a lifestyle where one submits oneself, even voluntarily, to becoming the property of another? I think this is a matter of scale. For instance, as a liberty-minded individual, I abhor Marxism, socialism, communism, etc. Yet I abide the platitude, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, inside my own family. To do otherwise would be neglectful parenting. As this idea scales up, I believe it becomes more and more dysfunctional by inches, all the way to the scale of a nation-state, which some hundreds of millions of dead people may attest to during last century's obsession with that particular bad idea. So I hate communism, yet with my young kids I'm a benevolent communist dictator who provides for all of their needs. Matters of scale like this also allow one to hold liberty and other ideas as paramount, yet hold some of the creatures closest to one's heart in loving bondage. Would that we could move to, or engage with, a polity that recognizes my wife's legal status as my property, but none the matter, since she will gracefully follow my lead, regardless of whether we live in the patriarchal Kingdom of Saudi Arabia or in the gynocentric People's Republic of Canada. Goreans on Earth must be capable of holding these opposites in one's heart, for many reasons, not least among them that many people come to Gore by way of some online intermediary, and these online intermediaries are themselves generally quite committed to leftward principles, which at their edges conflict with the more organic libertarian environment that John Norman theorized would give rise to the naturalistic sex roles. It's certainly true that open and free expression of all manners sexual is a libertarian, or even a classically liberal project in theory, but the project seems to be undertaken in most cases by people who emphatically embrace various big government ideas. At least it's not as bad as the people waiting in line at Starbucks while posting on their iPhones about how awful capitalism is. People like me, who are to the right of Attila the Hun, just have to hold our noses a little and click past the various rainbow flags, raised fist emblems, and DIE statements to get to a place where we may meet like-minded fellows. On a slightly personal note, I am of mixed heritage. On one side of my family, the government takes care of the people. On the other side, people fend for themselves. If anyone listening to this thinks the government will take good care of you, I implore you to drive through a res and see what it looks like to be on the receiving end of such largesse. I have a love-hate relationship with munches and other community-type events, since I've made some good friends here and there, but when I find people so open-minded that their brain has fallen out, I know I'm no longer among friends. In truth, I have an easier time introducing the doctors and dentists I meet at the gun range to Gore or Gore-adjacent ideas than I do introducing the notion of marksmanship as a practice to people at a BDSM munch. Back to Goreans and politics. Maybe I'm just a contrarian, heterodox, malcontent, regardless of circumstances. I used to like making women wear masks in public. It was part minor kink, part genuine Taliban-style oppression. Once the powers that be started telling everyone to mask up, they really ruined it for me. If anyone's going to oppress my woman and make her cover her face in public, it's going to be me. Perhaps people of a Gorean persuasion are more disagreeable than the average bear. I don't like being told what to do, but what breaks my heart is when I see another man jump, roll over, and sit nice when the government tells him to, or worse, when I see such a man turn into a snitch or a petty tyrant himself. I feel this especially when the person has ancestors, like mine, who've been very well abused by governments. Maybe he thinks this time will be different. Maybe he's just a credulous one. Now there's a man I don't want to be shoulder to shoulder with. I must admit, it took some restraint not to get physical with some of the people who loudly got in my face about what I was wearing to go grocery shopping over the last few years. Of course, none of this ire is directed at the poor teenagers who were told they had to enforce some mask mandate or lose their jobs. I'm specifically talking about the people who wanted me to think they were doing the Lord's work by getting on my case. Were you that concerned about this disease? Or did you get a bit of a rush out of telling people to stand on dots? If you really are scared of this thing, surely you would want to give an unclean person like myself a wide berth. Like your arm attached? Then don't touch me with it. Is that what this podcast is about? Am I just reaching out into the void to try to find my fellow libertarian taxation is theft, love me some guns lads? Maybe. Maybe I'm trying to make more of them. I do prefer dangerous friends and the company of women who appreciate exactly the kind of dangerous man I am. In a future episode, we're going to be looking at the black caste. Yes, there are excellent arguments about the merits of having assassins in our midst, both on Gore and on Earth. But please join me next week when we'll take a closer look at slave gruel and other Gorean foods, and the more general concept of the practice of gore as an aesthetic enterprise. Beauty is a truth more real than the burning sun itself, and we forget this at our peril. In the meantime, lads, stay free. Lasses, don't let those knees get lazy.